Could it be? With me, your man, Louie T, here on behalf of Bleacher Report with our day after reaction to the Commanders' 37-20 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week number 1. We sat right here, or I sat right here in this chair 5 minutes after the game and giving you my instant reaction to what I had just watched. After having a good night's rest and an opportunity to digest the game once again, but actually watch for certain things that I wasn't looking for, in particular, while I was watching the game live, I've come to a couple of conclusions that I think I might have been a little off on yesterday. So, first thing that I think I was somewhat adamant about, the offensive line wasn't as good as I thought it was. Now, it wasn't terrible, right? But I thought they were, really solid, and especially early on in the game, I didn't feel like they were beaten as many times as they were. But in fact, they were, and that's why Jayden Daniels took off so many times. He didn't feel comfortable back there. And it wasn't just one guy, but I will tell you the weakest link on this offensive line currently as constituted, and it's not a surprise if you're a Commanders fan. We watched this guy play last year. We wanted him either replaced or at least competition for him this year. Is Andrew Wiley, especially early in the game. He was getting beat like a drum, and it forced Jayden Daniels to vacate the pocket, take off and run, and not even read the field and see what he could do with the football. So when it starts off like that, when your first two dropbacks after, of course, the first, drop back of the game where Jayden throws it backwards and, it loses 13 yards. After he settles in, your first two dropbacks, there's immediate pressure off your right side. It's hard for you to then process that I've got a lot of time back here to sit and survey the field and get rid of the football. So he was probably a bit antsy. And it wasn't just Andrew Wiley, though. Nick Allegretti gave up some pressures, and they were, funneling in Brandon Coleman. And so he was in there a couple of times, and you could tell that this was not a cohesive unit too. Like some of the things that the Bucs did up front, it wasn't complicated. It should not have generated pressure, but this group had no time in the summer together, really, as a cohesive unit. And you could tell there were some miscommunications between who's picking this guy up. A late rusher would come on a delayed blitz and nobody would touch him. And all of a sudden, Jayden's running for his life. There's a play where Jayden ends up getting sacked. Austin Eckler doesn't pick up the guy coming up the A-gap, but nobody communicated anything. And so there were just so many different instances of the offensive line just not being as one. And I think over time, they'll get better. It's not going to be a great unit. We already know that, and we knew that going into the season, but they can be better than they were yesterday. They weren't terrible. And I want to reiterate that. They weren't terrible yesterday, but there are things that they can certainly clean up. And then, individually, one-on-one matchups, our guys are at a disadvantage because we don't have elite athletes outside of Sam Cosmi and Brandon Coleman on the offensive line. We don't have elite athletes. So we can be beat off of the snap just by a guy that's across from them that has, more athleticism and better technique, right? Or just has a rush plan for that matter. But at the end of the day, on the offensive line, I think that it's a group that will continue to get better. And Cornelius Lucas actually played really solidly in the past game, but I would just like to see them take the Band-Aid off, just rip it off of Brandon Coleman, and let's just see what he's got. I don't know if next week against the Giants is necessarily the best time to do that, or even the week after that against Cincinnati with Trey Hendrickson being the guy he would be facing, for a bunch of snaps. But maybe Arizona in week 4. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if hand-picking or cherry-picking an opponent and saying, hey, we think you're ready to play now. At some point, you just need to rip the Band-Aid off and throw him out there and see what he's got. Right. But overall, with the offensive line, they have to be better. There's no other way to say that. They have to give him enough time that he feels comfortable, not enough time to get rid of the football. There were times where Jayden had enough time to survey the field, and he just didn't like what he saw. And that's where I wanted to move to next is the performance of Jayden Daniels. I was encouraged after the game. I'm even more so encouraged now, having watched it back. I understand, and I knew going into this process that he's a rookie, and with rookies, mistakes will be made, and things are going to happen. And this is not going to be the last time we'll be having these types of conversations surrounding Jayden Daniels, the offensive line, the defense, et cetera, coaching staff. I feel like with Jayden, there were opportunities for throws right in front of him that, one thing I can tell you right now, having watched the tape back, and I knew this was a fact, right? We knew this was the case. He has an affinity for Zach Ertz. The first guy that he's looking for is Zach Ertz. Usually when you look at Jayden and where he wants to go with the football, especially when they run quick game, and that's another thing I need to apologize to Cliff Kingsbury, because one of the biggest questions I had was, where's the quick game? Why is he getting the ball out of his hands quickly? No, there were quick game opportunities that were there in front of Jayden, and for whatever reason, he turned some of them down. Some of them were because there was immediate pressure and he had to get out of there. Other times, the opportunities were there and he just didn't take them because he was keying in on Zach Ertz. They took Ertz away, and by the time he tried to get to another read, somebody was coming free, and now he needed to get out of the pocket, right? But if he were a little bit more decisive, Ertz is covered, let me get to McCaffrey, he's open. Or there was one play where the Bucs kind of reacted to him going to McCaffrey. He was going to go to McCaffrey. The Bucs reacted to it, but they wouldn't have gotten there before he would have gotten the ball to McCaffrey. All you're looking for on that particular play is a 4-yard gain. Anything more than that, and great, you'll take it. But the key there is you want 4 yards on first down. That was there. McCaffrey's there. They're coming down on McCaffrey, but they're not going to make it in time. He's going to catch that football. It'll be immediate tackle. So sort of like a check down over the ball when the running back checks down. If the linebacker's there, about a yard or two behind him, you check it down to the running back. They make the tackle, but you've gotten a 4 or 5 yard gain. That's what the point of that was, right? Is to get that 4 yard gain to set you up for a 2nd and 6. It was there. He panicked because he saw the Bucs react. And then he tries to throw it to his next read, and it didn't almost get picked off, but it was a dangerous throw, right? It was a way more dangerous throw than if he had just gotten it to McCaffrey quickly. There's another throw where Ertz is working across on a shallow cross the field and just get it to him, right? Like, he's there. Yes, there's a defender in trail technique, but if you put that ball in front of him, away from the defender, he'll catch it. And even if it's an immediate tackle, it's a 6 yard gain. Just throw it. He holds on to it. And ultimately gets sacked on the play and fumbles, right? Like, these are situations where hey, just get rid of it, right? There's a target there, right? It's not the cleanest. This isn't college. And I think sometimes with these young quarterbacks, they have to readjust in their minds what is wide open in the NFL. Because in college, wide open is wide open. Guys are creating 2-3 yards of separation. It's easy throws. You don't have to decipher if this defender is going to make a play on the ball or not. They've created tons of separation. So it's an easy, big window throw. In the NFL, those windows have shrunken to minute and minuscule windows of opportunity. You've got to throw that football, right? And so I think he'll adjust. He'll learn, right, as he continues to get more reps. He missed the deep ball to Terry. That's one I know he wants back. He said it in the post game after. Of course, we all know he wanted that one back. You can't miss that one. That one hurt. But overall, watching it back, I thought he did a really good job of just taking what he saw in front of him. There were some throws that I think and some decisions I'd like to see him make a little bit quicker. I'd like to see him, hang in there. Like, there was one time the Bucs came with a delayed blitz and he felt that pressure, right? It was late, but he was throwing a comeback on the outside to Olamide Zaccheaus. And, hey, just stand in there, big boy. Yeah, that pressure's coming. He's not going to hit you, because if he does, it's 15 yards. Stand in there, and even if he does hit you, even if you have to take this hit, that's a part of the job description, and you knew what you were signing up for. Stand in there tall, deliver the football accurately to the outside, and give your receiver a chance. He didn't give Olamide Zaccheaus a chance on that throw. It's too far to the outside. Now, if you're going to miss, He missed in the right spot, which is outside, not inside where it can get picked off. So that's a positive, but he's able to make that throw. We watched him make that throw against the Dolphins in the preseason. We've watched him make that throw. Something else that I'd like to be critical of Jayden with, and I've talked about this when he was coming out as, during the process as a rookie, is he needs to look to throw as a scrambler. Like he needs to look to be a playmaker with his arm when he extends. Immediately, once he tucks that football, he turns into a runner, and there's no chance of him locating a guy wide open. Because what happens when you tuck it as a quarterback or you get out of the pocket, the guys that are in coverage, they react to you coming outside of the pocket, and now they start to come towards you as the quarterback, and they leave their guy. They vacate the receiver that they were covering because now you're their main focus. There were times where he'd get out of the pocket, and the nearest defender leaves the guy that's in the flats, like Zach Ertz. Just dump it to Ertz. You don't need to run for 12 yards. Dump it to Ertz, and he can run for 12 or 15. You don't need to run. Dump it to McCaffrey, and he can run for maybe 15 yards, right? And so I'd like to see him extend plays to be a passer a little bit more. And that was something that I was very critical of him coming out of LSU. Didn't really see that at all yesterday. So I still don't see the evidence of him being a guy that extends plays as a passer. There were opportunities for some deep shots. There was one time where he was in the pocket and Luke McCaffrey has one-on-one on the outside and he runs by the defender. Give him a shot. What do you have to lose? Give him a shot. It's one-on-one coverage on the outside, right? And he had ample time on that play. I mean, he literally had 5 seconds on that play. He created more time in the pocket with good pocket mobility and created and extended. And McCaffrey was open. And he had time to get to that read. He just didn't cut it loose, right? And I don't even know if he worked all the way over to that read or not. But it was a learning experience. And I thought, all things considered, he never put the ball in harm's way. There was never a time where, we got away with one there, right? He was very, very particular about his decision-making, and I like that, okay? If he didn't like what he saw, I'm going to use my legs. I'm not even going to risk it. I would prefer him to do that than put the ball in harm's way, because the way this team is set up, we can't afford turnovers because right now we're not generating any turnovers. Speaking of which, let's get to the defensive side of the football. And just another thing, Austin Eckler is going to be really good for this team. I think the running backs are going to be outstanding for this team. You're not going to play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense every single week. So they're going to be even more important as we move forward throughout the course of this season. I can see these running backs being a huge part of this offense. Brian Robinson Jr. had a really good day. So did Austin Eckler in his limited amount of touches. Defensively, it was exactly what I thought it was. Upon further review, I'm doubling down on everything I said yesterday. And Cliff Kingsbury's game plan was not as bad as I thought. And so I just need to say that before we move on to the defensive side of the football. My apologies, Cliff. You put this offense in a position. And keep in mind, we moved the football, a lot of it because of Jayden Daniels' legs, but we moved the football very effectively throughout the day, okay? We should have scored 26 points at a bare minimum, probably 30 if he hits Terry McLaurin on the deep ball, and then you make one of the field goals. That's 30 points right there. This was not a poor offensive showing. So I just want to stress that again. But as you move to the defensive side of the football, it was disappointing because everything that we watched in real time was even more painstakingly obvious when you watched it back. The tackling was as shoddy as it gets. There was poor play recognition by the players. There was mass confusion in the secondary. Guys were playing too far off. And that's that situational football that we talk about, right? Guys having to know it's 3rd and 2. You can't play 8 yards off. You just can't. That's easy pitch and catch. You're giving a first down away. That's free lunch. It should be no free meals around here, okay? So, just obvious things that need to be cleaned up and addressed. Upon further review, Benjamin St-Juste wasn't terrible yesterday. He just didn't make plays. And isn't that the story of his career? Like, Benjamin St-Juste was there. These were great throws by Baker Mayfield. Excellent throws by Baker Mayfield. But he didn't turn his head to locate the football. And he was in the position to turn and locate ball. He wasn't beaten to the point where I can't look back for the football. He just didn't turn around and locate the ball, which I think if you're a Commanders fan, you've seen that story all too many times with Benjamin St-Juste. I thought that the run defense was strong for much of the game. And then I think that Florida heat got to him in the fourth quarter when the big runs started to happen with, Bucky Irvin and those big pops late in the game when they had him pinned deep with the score 30-14. I think it was really the Tampa Bay Heat. None of these guys, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, didn't play in a single preseason game. All right. A lot of people said after the game, oh, man, Bobby Wagner looked old. No, Bobby Wagner was tired. Okay. Like a lot of the defensive players, gassed. There were a lot of defensive snaps because the Buccaneers were 9 of 13 on third downs, which meant the defense stayed out on the field quite a bit. And I think they ran out of gas. They ran out of fuel at the end of this game. But before that, the Bucs primary running back, 15 carries, 31 yards. Okay. So from a run game perspective, I thought the defense held up. And there were 8 tackles for loss in the game by the Commanders. So again, they were very active up around the line of scrimmage. They were penetrating and playing on the opposite side. There were times where they over pursued, ran by the ball carrier, but I like the activity up front. Same can be said with the pass rush, especially early in the game. They had ample opportunities to get to Baker Mayfield, and guys just whiffed. It's very disappointing that you win. Deron Payne, an immediate win against the guard. He's coming after Baker Mayfield, and Baker just gives him a quick sidestep, and he's by him, right? Jonathan Allen, same thing, a late win for him. And he's getting to Baker Mayfield, and somehow Baker Mayfield just kind of gives him a little 1-2 step. He's by him. Same thing with Dante Fowler Jr., a late, wrap around on a twist, right? He sees Baker kind of stepping up in the pocket. He wraps around late, and he only gets one hand on him, right? This isn't one hand tag. You got to get the guy down on the ground. We had a chance for at least 4 or 5 sacks in this game. And, we just missed. And that led to more opportunities. Again, I talked about the penalties. You can't have those. There were tons of coverage busts in the secondary that led to scoring opportunities for the Bucs. They dropped one. They completed another, late in the game. And those are very correctable offenses, I was encouraged by what I saw with certain aspects of the game. We're not going to win the cornerback wide receiver battle very often. We're just not good enough in that area. There's no amount of coaching that's going to clean that up. We're going to have to just play better at corner. Guys are going to have to play their best. But more importantly, we're going to have to get to the quarterback. The run defense needs to continue to be as, I don't want to say dominant, because they still gave up big runs, runs of 22 and 30, whatever. I think a 22 and a 32-yard run in the game, which were the ones that were outliers that made the Bucs' day on the ground look admirable. It wasn't a good day on the ground for the Bucs. We dominated in that regard, but you can't give up those 2 big runs. Those count too. But you take those runs away, and the Bucs average less than 3 yards a carry on the day. Right? They're aiming and angling towards, 2 yards, close to 1 yards per carry, right? In that 1 point whatever range without those big runs, but they did happen. And so you got to clean that up. But ultimately, you have to win up front in the run game, and then you have to affect the quarterback, because the secondary is going to be a problem this year, because we just don't have the horses on the back end. And I think we can have some damage control there, where you have, and they're still figuring out some things, right? Emmanuel Forbes, I don't think they're going to give up on him, and they shouldn't. Let us as fans rant and rage about Emmanuel Forbes and his inability to play. They have to continue to work with what they have. There's nothing out there. I've seen people sending out lists of corners. Oh, we could sign one of these. No, those guys are on the streets for a reason. They're not on an NFL roster for a reason. If they were any good, there are 32 teams around the league. One of those teams would have picked up the phone, called one of their agents, and they would have been on an NFL roster right now. The fact that they're at home is because they aren't good enough to play in a league right now, or they've got some issues off the field or injury concerns, or they're just past their prime. So you might as well just stick with what you have at this point and just see what, the future holds for these corners. But you just continue to work. It's one game, right? Let us go crazy over one game. You have to keep your composure in that building if you're the coaching staff and say, hey, here's where we made mistakes. Here's where we messed up. Here's where we can be better. Let's clean it up, go back to the drawing board, and be better against the New York Giants in week 2. And that's what they should do. I expect them to do that. If we clean up the tackling, if we get to the quarterback, get him on the ground, we had an opportunity for a pick. We dropped that. If we don't have the communication bust in the back end, we don't have poor eye discipline and eye violations, passing off your receivers to no one. Once we clean those things up, this will be a much better defense. It was a very disappointing showing, but it's not that far-fetched to expect a defense in year one with a lot of different parts. Remember, over 60% of this roster is brand new, okay? A lot of it is on the defensive side of the football as well. So in a new scheme with a bunch of moving parts, as you're trying to implement your scheme and you're trying to get guys to understand what it is you're trying to do, and now you're going up against an opponent that you've got to prepare for. This isn't your teammates that you've been going against all summer. And this isn't the preseason where you're going to play 1 or 2 possessions and then get out of there. It's the real deal. And you could tell guys were tired. And when you're tired, you're more prone to mistakes. And so as they get more conditioned to playing a full entire game, you get healthier with Johnny Newton adding into that mix. I think the defense is going to be just fine. I haven't backed off of my statement that the defense is going to be the driving force. I know it appears that this defense is terrible after 1 week, and it's easy to bail on them. But I'm not going to do that because I saw things that encouraged me to lead me to believe that this defense can be really good. Keep in mind, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are really good, and they look like a well-oiled machine yesterday. Part of that was because of our shortcomings, but also that's Baker Mayfield, former #1 overall pick, who did have his best season of his career last season before taking the Bucs to the playoffs, winning the division, winning a playoff game, and almost going on the road and beating Detroit. So it's not like this was some chump team that we just let, run all over us. That's Mike Evans, one of the best receivers in NFL history. Yes, I just said that. The only receiver in NFL history to have 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons to start a career. These weren't chumps that we played against yesterday. Believe it or not, the Buccaneers are actually a quality football team, and they looked like it yesterday. We looked like we were just starting in a rebuilding phase, and they looked like a team that won a playoff game last year. There was a clear and definitive difference between the two. So while it sucked watching it yesterday, there are some takeaways that are positive for me. And look, it wasn't all, candies and, all lollipops and gumdrops yesterday after watching the film. There was things that disgusted me, right? We have to tackle better. We have to. That was a poor display and exhibition of getting professional football players on the ground. It was laughable yesterday what we watched. And then watching it back was even worse. Some of it was fatigue, but some of it was just poor pursuit angles, awful discipline as to how to break down and wrap up. They have to be better in that department. And I think they will. Because again, you don't tackle enough in the preseason. It just is what it is. You don't tackle enough in training camp anymore. And so they got to tighten up in that regard. Turnovers still remain an issue. We had one opportunity, but we got to create turnovers, man. I really think with this group, Jayden Daniels isn't going to turn it over a ton. He's just not. So if we can generate 1 or 2 turnovers in a game, it's going to give us a chance to win. But we're not even close. We're not even looking to pry the ball free. We're not even looking for the punch out. It's still the same things that I've seen from the defense in the past, and that's got to change. But my day after reaction to the week 1 loss against Tampa Bay is we looked like a team in year 1, week 1 of a recalibration, and it's going to take time. But I liked what I saw from Jayden Daniels. I liked what I saw from aspects of this offense. I would like to see Brandon Coleman just be thrown out there. Cornelius Lucas didn't play poorly. I have no issues with him from this game. He was one of the guys that actually performed pretty admirably in the game on the offensive line. Didn't have many issues with him, but I know what he is. I want to see what Brandon Coleman can do. And so they want to work him back slowly. That's their prerogative. But at some point, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. I think those running backs are going to be stellar for us this season. And then you get to the defensive side, we got to clean some things up. But I love the aggressiveness up front. We attacked the line of scrimmage. 8 tackles for loss. A bunch of pressures on Baker Mayfield. Just couldn't get him on the ground. Now, the secondary is a cause for concern. There's no way around it. It is what it is. But they still have pieces that they can shuffle around to figure out who are the best guys to have on the field. My honest opinion is Emmanuel Forbes isn't one of them. But again, it's their job to figure that out, not mine. I'm just telling you that Michael Davis, Noah Igbenogany, Benjamin St-Juste, and Mikey Sainristil are your 4 best options at corner. Figure it out and move forward in that direction. And I think they ultimately will figure those things out. All of this is the coaches are learning just like, the players are. They're figuring out who can and can't. And I know some of you are saying, well, why didn't you do that in the preseason? Why didn't you figure that out over the summer? There's only so much you can figure out. There's only so many reps that you're giving these guys because coaches are so fearful of players getting injured before the season starts that they're not willing to rep them during the time that they should be repping them and finding out if a guy can or can't. You don't want to show your hand. So in the preseason, you're playing vanilla coverages. So you're just telling the guy, hey, go play man-to-man. And if they don't excel at man-to-man, then you're not finding out what they do excel at, right? So I think they're going to figure out very quickly who can and can't in the secondary, because this defense can't be the best version of itself if the secondary is consistently letting them down. You're not even giving your defense a chance if you get to 3rd and 3 and you're playing 8 yards off. You're not going to give the defense a chance if that's the way you're going to play in the secondary. So there will be corrections made. They'll get better at tackling. They'll get the quarterback on the ground eventually. I think they'll be better conditioned as we move forward, and you won't see some of those hits in the run game that happened late in the ball game. They'll clean up some of those defensive breakdowns and miscommunications in the back end. That all comes with time, playing with one another, understanding what needs to be done. So I think the defense will be better, but it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch, but I come back to you a day after feeling reinvigorated, understanding that this is a process, and the early returns on week 1 and the demise of this season and this team were grossly overstated after the week 1 performance. The offense was better than I anticipated, and the defense was what I thought it was, but I expect them to be better. Right. Watching it yesterday and then watching it again, the defense was exactly what I thought watching it live. Not very good, but I think they can be better, and I think they will be better. And there were opportunities within this game for them to be better. And then also, I didn't even mention this, and I did yesterday, you can't have the penalties at the times that they had the penalties. We had 3 penalties on 3rd downs that extended Buccaneers drives that led to points. We're not good enough to do that. Clearly, we're not good enough to do that. So that's something else they have to clean up as well. And some of them were, during the course of the play, there weren't pre-snap penalties. Cleveland Farrell's hand to the face. You hate to see it. It happens, Hand starts here, pushes up. Next thing you know, it's there, and it's a penalty. It happens. You don't want it to happen. Manuel Forbes, you can't stop your feet 30 yards down the field. You just can't. And he gets crossed over and he panics and he reaches out and grabs the guy's face mask. You can't stop your feet as a defensive back 30 yards down the field. What are you doing? Anyway, I digress. I think that you'll see improvements with this team as early as this week against the Giants. And you'll see a team that is going to be able to compete with the likes of Cincinnati in week 3 and the Ravens in week 5 or 6, whenever we play them, and et cetera, et cetera. I've learned over the years to never overreact to week 1, whether good or bad. Don't overreact to week 1. Teams that played really poorly in week 1 can end up being really good teams this season, because as the season progresses, you improve and get better. And teams that played really well, for instance, the New Orleans Saints destroyed Carolina. Was it the Panthers that suck and they made the Panthers or the Saints look really good? Or are the Saints actually that good? Don't overreact to them scoring 40 points, lighting the scoreboard up and looking like a juggernaut. They got the Cowboys this week. Let's see how good the Saints are, right? The overreaction in week 1 is amazing every year. I watch it every year. I've been doing this for a very long time. I don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. So let's see what this team looks like in week 2. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this day after reaction, week 1 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 37-20 rather. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys next week and reacting to the Giants game. And hopefully the outcome is much different. And it's a tally in the left-hand column for the good guys. This one, not so much, but I am encouraged. A lot of things have to be cleaned up and salvaged before then, but I feel good about some of the things that they put on tape, and I think you can build off of some of those things. So till next time, I'm your man Louie T signing off. You guys have a good one. Take care.